Hello and welcome to the Resonant Life Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Leila Doolittle, and I am thrilled to have you join me today on a deep dive into the world of functional neurology, nervous system regulation, and a powerful modality I like to call neural encoding therapy. We'll also discuss neurotransmitter pathways, receptor sites, and reception of communication signals, and the ways that cells and glands and organs are responding, as well as how to use mindfulness practices to upgrade, optimize the nervous system and all of the neurological capacities in your wellness plan. And I want to bring it all together to tie it into optimizing your health and well-being and just lifestyle in general and how you feel. So let's dive right in and get started. I want to share with you some of the exciting cutting edge insights in neuroscience and integrative medicine. Insights that I've incorporated into my own protocols, treatments, exercises, therapies, and routines for clients who seek transformation on multiple levels: physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual, how they're showing up in the world. If you've ever wondered how to recode your brain, upgrade your nervous system, and tap into deeper states of consciousness, you're in the right place. Buckle up as we explore what it means to harness the power of brain, body, and spirit and achieve higher levels of performance healing and self-discovery. So let's get into understanding a little bit more about this concept of functional neurology as a foundation. Functional neurology focuses on optimizing the function of the nervous system using a variety of integrated and oftentimes just therapeutic approaches, exercises, kind of like PT for the brain. It's helping to form new neuroplastic connections between neurons, between neural circuits and neural pathways to increase the way that the nervous system in the brain is able to function. So unlike allopathic type neurology, which oftentimes just zooms right into acute disease states or injuries, functional neurology looks at the subtle interplay between these sensory inputs and motoric inputs, and then how the neural pathways are wiring and firing together and how they're calibrated and fine-tuned. And that's what we do is we'll add in little tweaks here and there and stimulation therapies, exercises to help encourage more of those neuroplastic connections. So that neuroplasticity is the rewiring of your brain. Your brain is so malleable and you have the capacity to upgrade it. So let's talk about how you can do that. So the core concept of the brain and the nervous system of neuroplasticity is that the brain is not static. It is not stagnant. It's not just stuck in a mold of how it is. A pattern of specific thinking can be upgraded. A pattern of function can also be upgraded. So it's constantly rewiring itself. This nervous system is malleable and it's always just pruning out different types of synapses that are no longer being used or just are dormant, not necessary for sustained. And then it will also grow. So it's like neuroplasticity can be a negative neuroplasticity where it's pruning out what no longer serves it well and whatever is not necessary. And then the positive neuroplasticity is the regrowing, rewiring, reconnecting of the synapses, which are the communication networks between the neurons. These are the little synaptic clefts where neurotransmitters and other types of ligands and proteins and things are communicating between the neurons, like through neuroelectrical signaling. So the brain is weaving and rewiring itself in intricate ways in response to stimuli, to the environment, to experiences. And it's so interesting because there are so many studies pioneered by neuroscientists that can show that there are specific cortical maps that can be demonstrated in the brain and reshaped well into adulthood just by various types of stimuli. And we can actually see this in different types of neural networks, imaging, EEGs, functional MRIs, and things where we can see the functional and the structural changes of the brain. So this adaptability means that we can consciously and strategically, directly create a healing process, a rewiring process, and an increasing of optimal functioning and an enhancement in cognitive, motor, emotion, and mental functions, IQ even. You start to get more memory, focus, concentration, and the self-expression. You're able to express yourself more. like in your most authentic form, you're able to communicate in ways that is more in alignment with who you are, what you feel in your heart and in your soul. You're able to actually be that and walk around your day living in alignment with that, because your nervous system, your neural networks are communicating, firing, wiring together in an expansive way and not in a restricted and stagnant or dormant or just routine and rut-like way. It's so exciting. You have the ability through targeted exercises and therapies and various types of sessions that you can incorporate into your daily routine to gain control of this higher level of being. It's so exciting. I love this stuff. Okay, so let's get into what it's like to have subtle types of dysfunctions and chronic conditions and like chronic infection issues that can inflame the brain and can create, through inflammation and inflammatory patterns in the brain, the neural networks will actually start to decrease how they're able to function, how they're able to communicate, create the signals of nervous system function if there's inflammation present and an issue with the fuel system, the communication systems, the building blocks that are needed for neurotransmitters. Like one of the ways that the neurons are communicating, or that the hormones and glands in your body are all in the right balance and working together and functioning optimally. So, like, think about someone that has persistent headaches or brain fog or mood dysregulation. They may not actually see obvious lesions or alterations structurally on an MRI. Maybe on a functional MRI where there's a quantitative measurement of specific percentages measuring against the whole brain percentile, a measurement of alterations and changes, you can see some areas of a little bit more atrophy or a little bit more inflammation, but it doesn't show like specifically what's going on in the function. So that's what we want to go into, is that deeper dive into the electrical wiring and these neuroelectrical circuitries. So functional neurology helps to detect slight imbalances in neurological functions like asymmetrical reflexes or small ocular tracking issues, like where you're not able to track on specific moving targets or between different saccades or like points or dots between different targets, and even postural weaknesses and how someone carries themselves. That shows an issue with the central nervous system's communication through the peripheral nervous system to the muscles, to the way that our body is naturally carrying itself. It also can lead to overall neurological effects on cognitive function. And it's so interesting how everything interplays, because the peripheral nervous system is receiving in signals from every organ system and from your fascia and your biomechanics of the joints and where they are, like the integrity of joint structure as well as joint function, and how healthy the body is holding itself, carrying itself. It's receiving in signals to the central nervous system, to the brain, from the rest of the body. And it's also sending out the signal. So we have input afferently and then output efferently. And this kind of communication back and forth is crucial for both directions. For the peripheral nervous system, the distal aspects, for the way that all tissues in the body, organs and glands are receiving signals from the nervous system, as well as what information is going back in through proprioceptive sense and through sensory sense, motoric sense and such. So what I like to do is I've developed specialized protocols that consider each individual's unique neural wiring based on neurological exams, specific types of functional outputs, what we can measure, and then compare to how optimal functioning is working. And we can also use like reflex integration, balance testing. We can use different information from just the way that the cranial nerves are working and the balance of the cranial nerves and the functions of these. We can use functional MRIs to see quantitative measurements of areas of atrophy or areas of inflammation so that we can specifically target clearing some of those things. And what we want to do is we want to measure these specific neural pathways that may be either overactive or underactive or out of balance, like hemispherically one side to the other, or even in the areas of afferent before or the efferent after the post of where the signals are going back and forth to. So what we do then is I like to create the plan based on these findings. And then we create a series of different types of exercises, therapies, and stimulations and neurological recoding for how we can take the brain up different levels. So we start encouraging the brain to lay down new neuroplastic connections, new neuroplasticity wiring to allow for increasing the functioning. It's amazing because the brain is always going towards like synchronization, resilience, etc. And it's just, what can we do to get the blockages of this out of the way? So that's like clearing the inflammation, and that uses a functional medicine approach to get to the root causes of what's causing the inflammation. Or if there's a chronic infection, some sort of dormant like viral condition or co-infection or mold, mycotoxins in the brain affect so many things neurologically. Lyme disease, any issues even with bacterial, yeast, fungal overgrowth, or parasitic overgrowth. The gut and the brain connection is so important, so crucial for neurotransmitter communication, as well as for the nervous system to receive the information from the enteric nervous system, from the way that the gastrointestinal tract is creating peristalsis and optimal functioning. So very important and all very connected. And that's what we build the plan out with, so that we get the best chance of creating a very personalized, comprehensive protocol for the functional neurology and the optimization of it. So let's talk about nervous system regulation. So this is what lies in the heart of functional neurology. The nervous system is just the comprehensive way that we reference the essential operating software of the body. So it's like just the way that there's like this hardwired in system that we know there are these signals that are going to and from the brain, from the central nervous system and back to the different organs, and helping to actually send the signaling for balanced optimal functioning of everything, for detox, for digestion, for your heart to respond properly, for you not to be in a sympathetic overdrive, for your adrenals to be balanced. Well, the nervous system, it is very dependent on the balancing effect. It's kind of like a teeter-totter system of the autonomic nervous system. This is one way that sympathetics can be up, parasympathetics can be higher, and we want to make sure that we're creating a resilience so that this can shift and transition according to what's necessary for experiences, but that your nervous system is able to regulate and have resilience to shift out of a stress response, a cortisol response quickly, so that you don't stay in a high sympathetic overdrive. Sympathetics is like fight, flight, or freeze mode, where there's something that's stressful and then the nervous system responds and reacts, and that's okay for just a short time. But if it lasts too long, then it can lead to adrenal issues, circadian rhythm disruption, nervous system dysregulation, adrenal exhaustion over time, etc. So we don't want that. We need to make sure that we keep that autonomic nervous system at a very balanced state. So one of the things that we want to do is help someone's nervous system to gain more resilience, so that if there's a stress response, there's just a quick little reaction and then a just gentle kind of relaxation, and everything comes back into that normal regulation. And this is where we have different types of regulatory techniques for this autonomic nervous system. And it can be through different types of breathing exercises, especially alongside mindfulness techniques, consciousness activating techniques, where we can shift into a more relaxed, calm state. Parasympathetic tone comes in, so that's that more right, rest, digest, regenerate type mode. We can do more heart rate variability types of therapies and training, and we can increase the heart rate variability. This is where there's more of a parasympathetic tone, more autonomic nervous system regulation. Some of these biofeedback responses of how we bring consciousness awareness to specific types of organs and structures and systems and functions, and then the nervous system actually will receive in that input that things are coming back into proper balance. So important for the nervous system and for resilience in the nervous system of overall regulation. This can also be crucial for helping with recovery from traumas and PTSD and big types of like stressors and memories of these stressors that are held somatically in the body. So like psychosomatic type symptoms is where there's neurological alterations that happen due to a major stress response, and then it harbors in the body. Like think about whenever we're under a lot of stress, our system kind of like our shoulders come down and we go into more of a fetal system or fetal pose type posturing. And that's just like the comfort, that's that comfort zone that we oftentimes will subconsciously need to just bring in the comfort to ourselves and the regulation to the nervous system. Well, somatically, our fascia and our joints and the structure biomechanically can hold on to it. So our body actually harbors traumas, and it's held. The memory of this is actually stored in the water in our system. We're like 70 to 90% water, depending on if we're well hydrated, and depending on our age, and many other types of things in different organ systems have different levels of it. But water holds memory, it holds imprints, so it holds specific structure. It's actually like holds the sacred geometry of specific information that every single cell responds to. So the extracellular matrix, all of the fluid around every single cell, every organ system, it is holding on to memories and information, especially whenever there are big trauma responses. It holds that information and that imprint. So we have to actually do upgrades to like the waters of our body, the fluid in our body. Specifically, this is one of the reasons why we have so much water retention, that people will notice that they feel all puffy and inflamed, and they feel like their joints are just stay inflamed, and they can't get rid of this chronic inflammation. And it's because obviously there's this imprint of these trauma responses and stress responses and autonomic nervous system dysregulation. And that's what we have to clear to somatically be able to release so much inflammation from our body that is affecting every organ system and every function. Let's talk about another aspect of nervous system regulation, vagus nerve tone. There's this concept of polyvagal theory where we're constantly in this shift where the cranial nerve 10, the vagus nerve, the wandering nerve in the body, these are the two nerves, cranial nerves, that come down through all the way to your abdominal system. So it goes through your body and travels to the organs and actually receives afferent information and picks up on signaling to tell the brain, the central nervous system, how your body is functioning, every single organ. If like your thyroid gland, if your adrenals are imbalanced, if there's a circadian rhythm compromise, if there's inflammation in some sort of biotoxin or mycotoxin has taken up space in the gastrointestinal tract, and now we have this overgrowth, and we need an immune system response, and the nervous system needs to help with this coordination. And then we have this vagus nerve system information signaling that goes up from like our microbiome that's in our gut, in our GI tract. And if the microbiome is getting out of balance, if there's like a bad bacteria, SIBO or SIFO, like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or fungal overgrowth, that can actually take the signaling up to the brain to say, ooh, there's an imbalance here. We need to mount an immune response so that we get a specific differentiation of the immune cells that can go take care of that job and can go clear it. This is the foundation. This is the root cause approach, that if the nervous system is in regulation pattern and constantly sending signals back and forth from the brain properly, and the reception of this information is in the right balance, and the signals are going directly to and through from like it needs to, then we can head off so many chronic issues. And if someone has had years worth of chronic issues in any type of organ system, they just had ongoing symptoms for years and they just cannot get to the bottom of it, the foundation of it, this is where it starts. Crucial. So higher vagal tone correlates with better emotional resilience and improved digestion, and clears out inflammation of the body. And it's so simple, like activities like humming or singing or gargling or any activation of the larynx or the pharynx here in your throat. That's an area that we have a direct control cognitively, consciously over the vagus nerve tone. We can do some vibration therapy to the abdomen in a specific direction so that we're making sure that we're moving in sequence with where the valves, especially the ileocecal valve and valves of Houston, need to be going, and not accidentally opening or closing them in the wrong directions. And so it is important to have the strategy, and we can teach you that. But what this does is this helps to start sending the signals through that vagus nerve in a stronger way, a better way. And then the polyvagal theory, we have a whole wealth of response that we can get into with conscious versus subconscious versus superconscious type of thought patterns. And this can lead to so many levels of sending the signals properly and receiving the signals in, so that the information that is signaling and going throughout the system and is imprinting into every single cell and optimizing the function of glands, organs, etc., that's all upgraded. And that's through consciousness work, visualization type exercises, like certain types of meditations that are specifically training to optimize, rewire, and encode your nervous system with higher upgrades of nervous system connections. So incredible. All right, let's talk about some regulation for different types of like sensory integration. Like there are gentle stimulation techniques involving different light sounds and tactile feedback, as well as the conscious type stimulation without any other types of treatments and therapies and modalities. So you don't need an actual tangible like light therapy or a specific type of sound frequency that you have to do. Instead, you can actually have certain types of input that come in through consciousness visualization because of the way that the frontal lobe can perceive whenever it is sending a signal of creating a strong visualization. And this can be trained over time that you have stronger levels of this type of visualization patterns. Then you can actually have encoding of specific sound codes, light codes, and these frequencies that upgrade the nervous system just through consciousness exercises. It's so powerful, so profound. And this can help regulate and actually release dormant types of traumas that have been present in the nervous system and just stayed in the nervous system for years, for sometimes somebody's almost entire life. Like something happened to them when they were childhood. Their system just still hasn't fully recovered from that. And then there's layers that happens in their teens and early adulthood and whatever it is, that's wherever that those trauma layers are going. Those layers actually can start to rewire and recode, and we can actually upgrade where these are stored in the system. So profound. What we do in these consciousness exercises, we'll bring a lot of awareness through visualization techniques in the nervous system to the connection somatically. So what I'll do is you'll often hear me going through a breathwork session where I guide you in specific levels of breathwork where we're in a more hypoxic state for a moment. Maybe we're taking you into a few breath holds so that your nervous system and your cells are getting optimized in the way that they're carrying oxygen. And then we're also bringing in plenty of the CO2 to kind of do a little offset and reset to the autonomic nervous system for your breath to heart coherence patterns. And then we go into a hyper oxygenation state where we're bringing in a lot more oxygen into your bloodstream and into the nervous system. And then this is priming the nervous system for optimal rewiring. Then we bring in some of the visualization aspects into the somatic sense, into the awareness of the brain consciously through a superconscious to the conscious to the subconscious type of approach. So then we're able to rewire the way that the extracellular matrix is holding on to the imprint and the coding and the information signals that have been there. We go into, of course, with so many of these techniques, we have to go into functional medicine, just foundations like lifestyle factors for nervous system regulation, like sleep hygiene, circadian rhythm resetting, regular types of movement styles that is retraining the somatic aspects of the nervous system communication and the afferent communication to the brain. Okay, so that's one of the things that we want to make sure we're doing is a comprehensive approach between the functional medicine and the functional neurology aspects so that we have full nervous system regulation in a way that is sustainable and lasts, no matter what types of experiences may happen in the future to a nervous system that can create a little slight imbalance for a moment, but then it rebalances itself if we've done all this other work to build the layers and the strong foundation of resilience. So now let's go into this concept that I keep referencing of neural encoding. So this is the way that I reference this therapy that I've created throughout the years of practice that I've been working in this field in functional neurology, functional medicine, and consciousness expansion work, biofeedback, bioenergetics, etc. So this neural encoding therapy is like a synergy of types of consciousness, mindfulness, visualizations, breathwork sessions, sound codes, light codes, different types of somatic sense. These are all working together in harmony to create these types of sessions that give huge amounts of neuroplastic exercise, neuroplastic rewiring and encoding. So what this means is I want to help the nervous system to receive in more sensory information and a pattern that is regulated. And it's translating the patterns into the neural activity for optimizing the way that there are functions in the brain and the way that there's a response, like a actual reactivity response that's regulated and sustainable for maintaining optimal function within the system. So we consciously are bringing in different types of stimuli, frequencies of sound and light, and we can encode beneficial patterns into our neural networks, into our neural pulse. And it actually rewires both functionally and structurally through the neuroplastic connections, these upgrades into the brain so that it's a sustainable, long-lasting resilience that we're building in through the different layers and patterns. So whenever we're thinking about like visualization, we're going from superconscious. Whenever we say this, we're stimulating into the superconscious, which is a higher level, higher frequency of consciousness than just the regular status quo consciousness that we're going about every single day in ruts and patterns of thought and habits of what is normal and non-novel to the brain. And we go up into superconscious where it is novel, it is unique, it is a new type of pattern of thinking, and we're stimulating the nervous system in a way that it then takes in from the superconscious to upgrade and encode and raise the vibrational frequency as well as the energetic output of every single electrical frequency, electrical charge that travels down the neural connections, and the ways that the new synapses are starting to build the new receptor sites for types of ligands and molecules and receptive stimuli and neurotransmitters, etc., for the communication signals that it's being received in, so that these new neurons and the new neural connections, the new neuronal connections, because neurons, we don't get more neurons, we just build new neural circuits and neural connections. They're all upgraded. So that's that superconscious to consciousness and then back into the subconscious so that it becomes this higher level of thinking without you having to consciously create these patterns of thought every single time. So it now becomes encoded into your body, into your nervous system. So like think about the frontal lobe. This is what's receiving in the stimuli, and it's receiving in these informations patterns, and it's like doesn't always distinguish between a vividly imagined scenario and reality. So we use carefully crafted imagery that can help to form new neural connections. And then sound frequencies, we'll use different types of hertz levels that can entrain brain waves between alpha and theta and delta and gamma and into the coherent state so that it's actually upgrading the way that your own brain puts out the brain waves and transitions into and out of the brain waves and stays in a coherent and resonant pattern. So this leads to more of that calmness, that creativity, the new inspiration, the wisdom of how you're expressing yourself, and even heightened insights of the way that you're receiving in information and wisdom, the way you're getting insights that are just mind-boggling and amazing. And now you can incorporate this into your daily life. You can use it into projects. So you start to gain a way of like manifesting new levels of how you work and how you connect to others and how you're actually like bringing in abundance into your life. And it's all just with these types of upgrading through encoding in these higher levels of conscious awareness and thought. Binaural beats and isochronic tones are another thing that we often use as a tool for the brain. So binaural beats is where one wave pattern of a specific type of frequency comes in one side from vestibular cochlear nerve, the cranial nerve 8. It brings in the signal into the temporal region. The medial geniculate nucleus is the way that we're receiving it into the brain spectrum. And then there's a specific other type of frequency that's different, and it's received into the opposite side, vestibular cochlear nerve, and then into the medial geniculate nucleus, and then into the temporal lobe. And so that's what perception of the sound. Well, whenever it's different frequencies going in, then it's the difference between it's that novel type of frequency pattern that the brain is perceiving as it's making sense of this that helps to stimulate new levels of alterations of its own hertz, its own brain waves, its own frequencies, and that the upgrades of how these sound codes can actually create these major, wonderful, incredible neuroplastic connections. So that's another way that we're using tools that the brain loves and receives information from and can actually rewire and upgrade. It's interesting because just like some tangible aspects of how people use these a day in and day out are different types of symptoms like stress responses, focus, concentration, or even sleep quality can be optimized. And even pain responses like decreasing headaches and things, we can use these types of sound codes for it. There are many other types of frequencies. I won't even go into all of these here because for time's sake, but what we can use is all these different frequencies for various cellular functions. And it also helps with upgrading the imprint of the memory within the waters, within the fluid of our bodies, so that we can clear inflammation and clear traumas and clear stress responses, etc. We also can use like light codes for the nervous system regulation and optimization. And this can be through photobiomodulation, through actually light therapy, red light, near infrared, far infrared, mid infrared, the like laser light that's coded into specific types of frequency patterns and pulses per second, and the ways that we can code in like the different levels and the power behind it. Those are ways that we can optimize mitochondrial function and aid in tissue repair and all these tangible things. And that light therapy, just like the way that it's activating the cells, we actually create consciously light patterns through the neural connections as we're stimulating new neuroplastic rewiring and the electrical signaling. So the mindfulness, consciousness, meditations, visualizations, etc., can actually create those types of responses for light code stimulations. And so that's through like visualization of different kinds of color codes. Then you think about and imagine like this certain type of color, and then there's certain parts of the brain that are all getting upgraded with these types of visualizations. There are also like subtle light patterns of like pulsed or patterned light, and things like that can actually create like visualization of kaleidoscope type images that the visual cortex, the lateral geniculate nucleus in the brainstem, and the visual cortex of the way that your optic nerve and the visualization of the conscious perception of the way that you're consciously perceiving this actually gets stimulation very similar to the way that it would if you're actually looking at different types of lights and different colors of lights. So we're able to bring in more of these like creative introspective states and more of this nervous system upregulation just with these different kinds of consciousness. It's so fascinating how different like light code, color code exposures in your visualization centers, and whenever you have this, then it creates that expansion and that stimulation. It can actually temporarily change the way that your brain communicates, and we over time create enough of that neuroplastic change in these visual type centers and visualization centers that you actually have higher states of self-awareness and emotional release, and you're clearing so many of these different thought patterns because there are new novel ways of consciously and super consciously thinking, and your nervous system is rewiring itself on even a subconscious level. So I love guiding people in these neuroplastic rewiring connections, meditations, and breathwork sessions, and things like that. So if you would like to check out any of these, we do extensive amounts of these for wellness as well as for energetic work and abundance work and just consciousness expansion and even nervous system regulation for clearing. So the different types of programs that you would want to go into according to whatever your goals are is like if you want to go into more wellness, then you might want to go into this massive, wonderfully comprehensive type of approach in the Transcend program. This is the program that's a 6-month deep dive program that goes through every single organ system of your body, activates and clears through functional medicine, functional neurology, and through all of these types of routines and patterns that you can create this higher level of encoding. And so it's a complete system reset on every integral level, every layer. We also have a nervous system regulation and rebalancing program that is for clearing patterns of stress responses, trauma responses, PTSD, like some of these ways that these different patterns of major stressors are stored in our nervous system and stored in our body and creating this chronic inflammatory response and all of these dysfunctions that we're experiencing. So that's more for clearing some of those deeper layers within the nervous system, and that's in the mental and emotional and energetic, even like the spiritual aspects of where something is deep in our core and just harboring and holding on to those trauma responses. And then the other one is going to be through the Abundance Blueprint course, and that's the foundations for consciousness expansion, and that really just helps to clear stagnant energy, whatever has been stuck in our nervous system that are roadblocks to us progressing forward, moving forward in life, and not stepping into the driver's seat of our life, really becoming a leader in our life instead of just being in the passenger seat and just watching the days go by while you're just going on this hamster wheel chasing health and chasing all these things that are such a distraction from you being the greatest version of yourself and expressing yourself fully and being in harmony with exactly what it is that you want to create in life. So these are these different layers of the programs and courses. And then taking that a step further, we go into the mastery program, which is a really intensive, comprehensive layer every single month. It's building on last. And this just helps with a full system transformation that you can tangibly see in every aspect of your life. So this is just how you are living your life and expressing your life, and also bringing in to your life what things you need. It will create profound reality shifts in it because of the way that you're able to fully step in without having energetic stagnation of just your own consciousness or your own nervous system regulation patterns. So those are the ways that you can get involved with more of this nervous system regulation. All right. Let's go into how we go up the different levels to really create profound changes. So we know that we're able to build and layer. So what we're doing is we want to start with like 10 to 15 minute types of sessions of combining like the sound and the light and the therapies and the encoding for these things into your visual centers. And then the visualization centers can also be upgraded through neuroplastic communication, and then also different types of tools that will upgrade the neuroplasticity in the nervous system and the regulation. And then we do progressive protocols to where we're layering on it and increasing the complexity. And then we're bringing in even stronger tools that you can use for this. And this is layering in different levels of breath work and targeting like stronger types of afferent information and sensory stimulation that's going into the brain, advanced levels of like mindful awareness and consciousness that are much higher frequencies that actually are tough to stay in if you're at a lower level just working up. And so there are many different layers that we can work you into with that gradual progressiveness and increasing to build into the layers. And that's why there's always a moving forward. We're never keeping at the same level in your life and in your wellness journey or in your nervous system healing journey. And then in some of these different programs, we also put a really strong influence on why it's so important to work with a practitioner and to not just only listen to these sessions or do these sessions on your own, but also to have a group session, a group connections, because being around like-minded people in a community and being around a tribe and being around people that can give you inspiration, there's a resonant effect when you're practicing in groups, and there's an amplification of the energetic field and that sense of that collective coherence that occurs that can create profound shifts as well. And how many of us have felt like we're alone on our healing journeys? It can get very lonely. It can get very just overwhelming over time, because it's like we're walking these journeys and we're learning so many new things, and then we're trying to advance ourselves into higher layers of how we're showing up in our lives. And it's not easy to go at it alone. So it's so wonderful to have a practitioner bring in new levels of inspiration and to guide you in specific ways that maybe you haven't been able to do yourself. And maybe you've been at a kind of just like status quo, just being at the same level in life, and your days and months and years are just passing you by. And you want to just have somebody inspire you and coach you and guide you and hold that accountability to come up to higher layers and to constantly increase those layers. So that's what's so profound about this kind of nervous system regulation and then these like programs and courses and that community feel and that atmosphere, is because it's so important to have that collective consciousness and just that inspiration that happens whenever you're finally feel like you are joining into a new way, a new level of experience in life, being in life. So let's shift gears and let's talk about neurotransmitters and communication signals. And neurotransmitters are, if we talk in biochemical language of the brain, the neurotransmitters are getting produced as messengers that are carrying crucial information for how thoughts, emotions, mental factors, even stress responses, neuroregulation, even information about like different types of imbalances in chronic illness cases where biotoxins creating inflammation in the body can actually create various levels or imbalancing of neurotransmitter production, as well as a alteration in the way that neurotransmitters are being received into the signals, into the receptor sites. the neurons have specific receptors for information, for the afferent information. So these synapses are receiving and signaling the information. Well, if over time we've had chronic inflammation or biotoxin illness, mycotoxins, mold in the brain, or any of these other types of inflammatory conditions that over time just start to block up the receptors, environmental toxins, glyphosates, heavy metals, pesticides, etc., all these things can take its toll on the way and the shape that these receptor sites are and how healthy they are, how receptive they are to actually receiving the signal. So it's almost like a staticky antenna that is just needing to be reconnected and rewired so that it can receive signals in a way that it picks up directly, clearly, that communication and that information. And that's what we want to do with functional medicine and the functional neurology, and then the mindful interventions help us to rewire at a molecular level the way that your system is receiving and sending the signals and the information. So let's talk about some neurotransmitter basics. Okay, like dopamine, produced in your basic ganglia. This is one of the areas that can be stimulated by different movement patterns. This is why like qigong movements or yoga or just exercise in general can really be beneficial for dopamine. This is your reward and motivation. This is your ability to feel like you love doing what you're doing. You're getting a wonderful response from your hobbies and your interests and things that bring you pleasure and joy. And also that you have the motivation to get up and do and to continue increasing your levels in life. Serotonin, 90% plus is made in your gut. And very important factors to this is how balanced is your microbiome? And do we have the right species of probiotics in our gut, the right species of bacteria living in our gut in harmony with all of the other gastrointestinal factors? And so this serotonin is like your happiness, your sense of well-being, you feeling good and feeling like yourself, and it controls and regulates mood, appetite. Melatonin, sleep regulation, there's a conversion factor into that. So this is an important part for your circadian rhythm. GABA is a neurotransmitter that is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. It creates a calming effect and helps you to shift out of an anxiety response. So your amygdala part of your brain, like in the limbic system, isn't hyperwired to constantly be in a state of like underlying anxiety and worry and fear, and that holds you back from moving forward in life, from progressing and up-leveling your life. And then glutamate, this is one of those excitatory type neurotransmitters that is essential for learning and memory. And there can also be imbalances in this caused by some toxins in food, like monosodium glutamate can create a really bad imbalancing effect on these signals and can actually lead to horrible headaches and migraines and inflammatory conditions. And this is found in a lot of those like processed foods and like Chinese food. And so, be careful of those sources and make sure you're having really healthy nutrients based sources that's phytonutrient rich and nourishing and not filled with toxins, as neurotoxins can be very detrimental to neurotransmitters. Acetylcholine is another neurotransmitter. It's very important for cognitive function, memory, focus, concentration, attention, and helps you feel like you're receiving in information, you're able to bring in knowledge, and you're actually receiving a more perceptive to like higher levels of inspiration and insights. So like getting downloads of wisdom and information that are inspirational to you as a being, not just to your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, but also to like your spirit, your soul, and what you love, what you crave, getting inspired by, and what brings you that excitement and joy. And acetylcholine is also important for like every muscle to function optimally, and also gastrointestinal tract. So now we're back to that functional medicine connection between importance of functional neurology and the balance in the biochemistry of the nervous system and these communication signals being put out, as well as how the functional medicine aspects of every single other organ system is receiving that information, those signals. Crucial. So some of the receptor sites and the cellular response that can happen, it's like a lock and key mechanism. So neurotransmitters bind to specific types of receptor sites, and the shape of these receptor sites is important, that we have a healthy functional shape. And this initiates a whole cascade of events inside the cells. And this is every cell in the body is receiving various types of information signals, the information being received, like we're talking about neurotransmitters. Well, it's also important for like various ligands and proteins and all the other communication signals of hormones that are getting produced. And there's this constant interplay of information and signaling that is going to every organ system of the body and to every aspect of how your system is sending out the information from this and the reception of it as well as the response to it. So whenever we have like receptor sensitivity, like chronic stress or inflammation, that can alter the receptor sensitivity. It's like it alters the antenna, the information signal being received properly, and contributes to tolerance or deficiency. And you can get sensitivities to various things to where then there are a biofeedback response that creates an imbalance. We actually get receptor site sensitivity with many types of environmental toxins that can dock into the receptor sites, that can block them, that can create a toxic response within the signaling of how the information is being received in various organelles. So let's talk about, like, for example, neurotransmitters and the internal communication that happens. Like once a neurotransmitter binds, there's a second messenger system like CAMP, and it can activate gene response changes, expression of the genes, like epigenetic expression. It can actually bring in the epigenetic modulation of how cells are functioning, as well as how they're sending out signals and recoding themselves, and then the information as there's transcription of the cells into new cells. There's differentiation and like replication of cells. So like the mRNA recoding and everything else. So epigenetics as a foundation can be affected directly with this nervous system types of the consciousness patterns and the thoughts and the mindfulness and the visualizations and the biomechanical, biochemical types of changes that can occur from this. And you have the power to actually tap into these tools with these sessions and incorporate them into your daily life. So you're constantly upgrading. It's so fascinating. Let's talk about the glands, like master glands, pituitary, hypothalamus, pineal gland. These orchestrate hormonal stimulation and releasing type of signaling patterns and hormones. And this will go to various, like the thyroid and the adrenals and the gonads, the ovaries or the testes. And then this can actually be affected by neurotransmitter levels, affecting your hormones, affecting now the hormone metabolites and how those hormones are broken down. And then there are so many cascades of health issues that can happen whenever there's not a balancing effect within that response of those stimulatory or releasing hormones. For example, the adrenal glands. Let's talk about the circadian rhythm and the way that cortisol release under stress can actually disrupt neurotransmitter balance, and it can actually create stress responses that lean us into sympathetic overdrive over time. And this further, of course, disturbs the emotional well-being and the neuroplasticity and how you feel all day, every day. Okay, so let's go into a deep dive about the endocrine system, particularly the HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal axis, and how this all ties together. So the hypothalamus and the pituitary, these we've oftentimes referenced to as the master control centers. So this is where they interpret signals from the nervous system and adjust hormone release accordingly. And they release the stimulatory and the releasing hormones to control how the thyroid, the adrenals, the gonads, the ovaries, the testes are all sending out the hormones and creating hormones. This is very important for all the balancing effects and the rhythms of the body. So it's so important that this nervous system is adjusting these regulatory centers accordingly in a healthy way. Now, this is all interconnected, the HPA axis, through the limbic structures for emotion regulation and how the body's receiving in emotion signals and sensory signals. And this is where emotional states can actually impact neurotransmitter and hormone output, the communication signal output between various organ systems. So the thyroid, the adrenals are two of the receptor type of organs that interact with this hypothalamus and pituitary master glands. And like for the example, the thyroid hormones are very important within the nervous system for how your metabolism is and how the mitochondria are actually able to receive in the information for how much energetic output they're putting out. So the ATP signals. And this can actually have impact. The thyroid hormones can impact and influence brain function, metabolism, and even how we process sensory experiences. The adrenal health. This is where cortisol and DHEA, this will modulate stress responses and nutrient partitioning, like where your body is sending the signals of the fuel sources that you take in and you digest and that you absorb in, where those fuel sources will go. The body will actually prioritize where that should be sent. And it can either enhance or degrade neuroplasticity over time. This is where physical, emotional, and spiritual layers converge. It's so important that the stress from negative thoughts can have the right balancing effect, and you have more resilience within your nervous system so that they don't trigger a huge cortisol spike. And this is where stress from negative thoughts can trigger cortisol spikes. So, a guided meditation with visualization of consciousness thought pattern shifts can actually shift the autonomic nervous system into a parasympathetic state, a more peaceful, restful, regenerative state, reducing cortisol and allowing for deeper healing. And this interplay underscores so many ways why the advanced therapies like the neural encoding approach, it will also have an impact on hormonal balance, on digestion and integration of your fuel sources as building blocks for all the communication signals, hormones, neurotransmitters in your body, the emotional, mental well-being of how your neurotransmitters are sending signals that actually create an impact on how you feel and how much you feel like yourself and are able to express yourself, or how much you're just kind of living in a shell, just living in the passenger seat of your life, just watching the moment just drift by and the days and the years go by and you just wake up in life and you're like, oh my gosh, where did the past decade go? And you were just only halfway there. You weren't actually expressing yourself fully and living your life to the fullest at full capacity without limitations. Crucial. So important that we have this nervous system regulation and rebalancing with these very simple little tools that you can incorporate into your daily life, into your routine. So let's get practical. I want to offer a blueprint of the types of protocols and routines that I implement for clients that are in our programs and where they want to upgrade their neural and energetic framework and just want to have something and be empowered by something where they can utilize these tools to create profound reality shifts in their own sense of well-being and their own nervous system. So I love doing a daily neural encoding practice, and this can be individualized for each person according to where their health goals are, functional medicine wise, functional neurology wise, consciousness wise, and where we need to work on various layers of healing. So what we would do is I would give various types of meditations that alter and change each week, and even sometimes like 2 or 3 different types throughout each week, so that there's different layers of consciousness and cognitive updates that happen in anywhere from like 15 to 30-minute sessions. Sometimes if we need to do just short little clips so that it fits into somebody's daily life and their busy routine schedule, we can do that. And what happens is it starts to create these huge shifts in the neuroplasticity. So this will integrate in various sound codes and light codes and different tools, and this creates those neuroplastic shifts and changes. And then we layer up. So we go up the different levels, and that way we're constantly progressing the nervous system forward, and you're able to unlock new levels of power within conscious and cognitive processing. So we'll layer in like various types of coding and the light therapy coding and the sound coding and even some of the like deep breathing responses, and that creates shifts in the blood system and in the blood flow and in the way that red blood cells are carrying in the communication and the signaling, and even in the various glands. The breath work can have impact on different types of organ systems and on detox pathways, as breath is one of the proper types of drainage pathways and detox pathways that your system gets rid of toxins with. And we will bring in more emotional resonant visualizations for healing and empowerment and gratitude, and these various things that actually create neuroplastic signals, like actually produce and increase the way that your neurotransmitters are produced during these sessions. Then we do like some various types of nervous system regulation, like morning cold exposure and going into contrast therapy, where you're in the shower and you turn it to cold just for a little bit to get a vagus nerve stimulation and get more of that polyvagal therapy of the behind the scenes for nervous system, limbic system clearing. This will also improve resilience within the mitochondria for the energy production of ATP signaling, the energy molecule that's necessary for every single activity and function that happens in the body. We also will do some specific types of protocols for HRV training. So we're increasing the resilience within the heart rate variability and the way that the heart has specific levels of coherence with the nervous system and is bringing in more resilience and calmness. And you get more of those rapid shifts out of a sympathetic response back into a very zen, peaceful state that the body and the nervous system can work best with. And we'll do in the routine, a midday pause of 5 minutes of a specific type of breathwork pattern or gentle movement, yoga flow, qigong flow to reset stress levels. And then also, of course, all of this within every single one of these programs that I do with clients, we have to come up with foundation for nutritional and supplement support because the functional medicine aspects have to be optimized for the building blocks of the fuel sources. And so omega-3 fatty acids, for example, this can promote membrane fluidity in neurons and aid in neuroplasticity and optimal growth of the neurons and the neuroplasticity. And adaptogens like the ashwagandha and rhodiola or holy basil, these can actually balance cortisol and help support adrenal health and circadian rhythm. Amino acids, these are the foundational building blocks for ligands and proteins and communication signals. Like L-theanine is calming and very important for GABA, and 5-HTP, important for serotonin precursor, and also has an impact on your melatonin and overall sleep and regeneration during your sleep. So you go into very long states of rapid eye movement sleep where you're in more regeneration. Tyrosine is a dopamine precursor for your sense of motivation and your excitement and joy in life. And this is so important that through these visualization nervous system rebalancing therapies, and we're giving you the building blocks, then you have everything your system needs for these huge, profound shifts and changes. One of the other aspects that we're going to be upgrading in these types of programs is epigenetic support. So methylation support for foundation and building blocks and cofactors for every single pathway of production in your body, like B complex in the specific methylated form, or like meditation for gene expression, where we're actually able to bring in visualization and therapies for reducing inflammatory genes and actually altering telomerase activity. So this is like the length of the telomerase, which is one of the markers of cellular aging and longevity in every single cell. So we'll do periodic neural tune-ups where we, through functional neurology assessments, will check on reflexes and ocular tracking and balance and coordination and cognition and IQ and memory of concentration. And we're able to use various tools to incorporate in the functional neurology to actually create the changes in this. And then we can have assessment tools to see it. So neurofeedback, biofeedback, brain mapping, EEGs, or HRV based like neural sensory stimulation. This will all to give us signals about and information about how the nervous system is actually shifting. And we can see that with our program participants that we're getting huge changes in these biomarkers and biometrics. So we actually see the tangible effects of these neuroencoding techniques. And of course, as I was saying before, it's so important for us to have that community feel, that accountability and support. And that's why it's so nice to have group sessions where you're around like-minded people to get inspiration from. And then you're able to also feel understood. And as you're going through these types of upgrades and leveling up in your life, you can actually create inspiration and have a lot more inspiration with other people for how you're incorporating in these tools and using them. And it might inspire you in ways that you wouldn't have even thought of before whenever you're going through this processing. So that's the motivation, social support, etc., that creates that collective energy of profound change. And then we also want to just make sure that we are, as a foundation, knowing that your nervous system is constantly upgrading itself. It's either rewiring itself in a way that it's staying in the stagnant, the rut of thinking, and it's just like the same perseverating thoughts, the same type of mental patterns, emotional patterns, or cognitive patterns that have ever happened. All the thought processes, we can just stay in loops. We can just stay at status quo. We can just stay at a certain level in life. Or we can actually step into the driver's seat, be a leader in our own life, create a life of our dreams with very simple foundational nervous system regulation techniques that can give you profound reality shifts. So remember, your brain and nervous system are not static. They are constantly capable of upgrading through this mindfulness, targeted efforts, and just the way that you are choosing to step into a capacity for reshaping and rewiring your neural networks and recalibrating your stress response to create more resilience, you're unleashing deeper levels of creativity, of wellness, resilience, and incredible capacity to be the greatest version of yourself without limitations. So, functional neurology, nervous system regulation, neurocoding therapy, and the orchestration of neurotransmitters and glandular communication all converge to create a multidimensional approach to upleveling your human potential and the way that you can be and express as an incredible, beautiful being of light and inspiration to so many around you. So choose to step it up and to be the greatest version of yourself and to have the life of your dreams. I have dedicated my practice to helping clients to navigate these frontiers and using my scientifically grounded strategies and this holistic, comprehensive approach to spark this transformation. I am creating protocols and so many wonderful, incredible therapies that are so transformational. I encourage you to explore these protocols, integrate them into your daily life, and consider working with me in any of these programs to personalize it to your journey. And if you resonated with this episode, I would be so grateful if you would share it with someone that may be inspired by it. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this exploration of functional neurology, neural encoding, and mind body energetics as fascinating and inspirational as I do. So, cheers to co-creating a life of resilience, clarity, and abundant vitality. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with anyone who might benefit from discovering the power of a fully optimized nervous system. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Resonant Life podcast so you don't miss the future episodes packed with insights on comprehensive functional medicine, functional neurology, healing, quantum biology, and quantum physics and bioenergetics, and many more topics of inspiration. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, stay resonant.